The following is a presentation of the Healthcare Facilities Network.
Hello, and welcome to the Healthcare Facilities Network. I am your host, Peter Martin, the president of Gosselin, Martin Associates. And as always, I thank you for clicking on our network. I'm pleased to introduce today's episode, which we are calling Team Development and Composition. It's a two-part episode with my guests, Clayton Smith, who's the vice president of facility operations down at Children's Dallas in Dallas, Texas, and Taylor Vaughn, who is one of Clayton's managers down at Children's Dallas. So it's an interesting conversation that we have. I've talked with Clayton a number of times over the years, and we've talked about a number of different areas, from finance to artificial intelligence to the way his philosophy in developing a team, and we thought that this would be a good episode to promote. And it's great to have Taylor on as well, as Taylor reports into Clayton and has for about 4 years now. Taylor has a very interesting path into healthcare facilities management. We talk about that in our very first episode, as we also talk about developing a team. And she talks about how she learned the industry, because she came in from something completely different. And her story is one that I haven't heard before, and that's what I like about talking to people, because you always hear these unique ways that people get in by happenstance, and then they end up falling into a career, which is nice. Taylor is also the president-elect for the Texas Healthcare Facilities Management Association, TAFM, they call it down there. So it's a really good discussion that we have with Clayton and with Taylor. We touch on things from, as I said, developing a team, Clayton's philosophy. He's got a group of managers, Taylor included, who are very young relative to the national average. So he's in a good spot there. He's also fully staffed, which is good. So we talk about that. We also talk about, what if you are a smaller hospital? You know, there's, according to AHA, there's like 6,130, 6,129 to be exact, hospitals in America. 1,800 of those are community rural hospitals or critical access hospitals. Even a larger percentage are community-based, smaller hospitals. So what if you're in one of these smaller hospitals and you're struggling just to attract people? And so I asked Clayton about that in episode 2. What can these smaller hospitals do, and how can they implement a program? So he talks about building relationships, building alliances, how he went about it. And I think that it's instructive, no matter the size of your hospital. Some of the things mentioned by Clayton, I think, can be implemented, and that's what I think gives this particular episode some great validity to it. I was thinking as I was rewatching this episode, as you may know if you've watched before, I went to Marquette University, a very proud Marquette alum, and back in 1977, when we won our only national championship, which you can see over my left shoulder, the Sports Illustrated cover from that particular title, the coach Al McGuire, who was a legendary figure in college basketball, they used to call him the philosopher coach, because he had a lot of New York wit and wisdom. Very interesting person from a leadership perspective and a development perspective. But he coined the phrase seashells and balloons. And what he meant by seashells and balloons is something that's pleasant, something that's gentle, walking in your bare feet on dew grass, grass that's loaded with dew in the morning. So seashells and balloons he would use to connote something that was pleasant and enjoyable. And I understand and realize that not all hospitals are enjoying seashells and balloons. It's a tough time out there. Here at the Healthcare Facilities Network, you cover the good, you cover the bad, and you cover the ugly, and you cover the entire gamut. And so it is challenging, and it can be challenging. And so we never want to forget about those smaller hospitals and what can they do to try to implement a program that keeps their people happy, and that keeps management happy, and that keeps leadership engaged. Because those community-based hospitals are just as important as those large, big city hospitals. So anyways, that is the topic of our discussion with Clayton and with Taylor, and so we get into a lot of good nitty-gritty. So I hope you enjoy it. As I said, there are 2 episodes. We are calling it Team Development and Composition, so whether you're a longtime leader or new to the role, I think there's some valuable information in here. So with that, I'm Peter Martin signing off, and we're going to kick it over to my discussion with Clayton Smith and Taylor Vaughn. As always, thank you for clicking on this network. I appreciate it.
can see, I have two guests who have joined me today. And the topic of our discussion today is team development and composition. It's a really timely topic, given some of the issues that we are seeing in healthcare facilities management relative to retention, employee retention. Hear that all the time now, identifying skills. And so we thought with my guests that this would be a timely topic. Both of these folks are experienced in working out in the field, and rather than me introduce them, I would ask each of them to introduce themselves. And Taylor, why don't we go with you first, please?
Yeah, hi, Peter. Thanks for having me. My name's Taylor Vaughn. I'm currently a facility manager at Children's Health in Dallas. I oversee regulatory compliance for facilities. I also work part-time for Legacy FM as a content creator.
Excellent. Thank you, Taylor.
Hi, I'm Clayton Smith. I'm the Vice President of Facilities Operations at Children's Health in Dallas. We are a 1.5 million square feet downtown campus hospital for pediatrics. We're about 400 beds. We're the busiest pediatric ED in the country, and are experiencing pretty exponential growth in the market and within ourselves.
Excellent. Thank you, Clayton. Thank you, Taylor. Clayton and I have talked a number of times over the years, and like many of the topics that have been appearing on the network, they come out of the discussions I have with you folks in the field. And Clayton and I were talking. Clayton, actually, you did provide me 3 different topic areas, and he knows this because we had a 30-minute conversation, and I emailed him back and I said, we can talk about AI, we can talk about finance, we can talk about team development and composition. And we settled on team development and composition. So I thank them both for their time. Let me ask a question first, though, before we delve into team development and composition. As we know, and we've been saying this on our recruitments, a lot of people want to move south. And relative to the South, I don't know that there's a hotter area than where you are in Texas or down in Florida. What's the market like right now for people who are up north, maybe north of the Mason-Dixon line or not in Florida? What's it like down there right now in healthcare facilities management and hospitals?
We're definitely experiencing that. The Dallas Metroplex is on track to become the 3rd largest metro in the country by 2030. We see 1 in 6 babies born in the United States are born within our service area here of North Texas.
That's a great statistic.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And just continuing to grow. I mean, it's a little unnerving how fast things are moving. And so when we go to recruitments and we see candidates come in, the pool of candidates are a lot of folks from up north. And I think a piece of that is just, post-COVID, wanting to stretch out a little bit. There's so many opportunities in the southern regions. I've got experience in Florida as well. It's the same, that it's easy to get people recruited down to Florida, especially when you bring them in January. But
I'll tell you what, and you know what, you recruit from people up here because it's June. We're recording this June 21st, whatever. We're in the 60s every day. It's been horrific weather-wise up here. No summer. I know you guys aren't that way, but
yeah, we should hit 100 today. So yeah. But I think the market of qualified people is pretty high, actually. Like, we as we look for those mid-career level, maybe even a senior manager, director level positions, there's a pretty solid wealth of staff available.
Nice. How about, do you get challenges relative to the housing market, cost of living? Is that starting to rise on you?
Absolutely. The only argument we have anymore is against folks in California. We can recruit, and I've had a couple of conversations with some recruits in California who are like, oh yeah, we want to get back, while we can still get in. But if you take someone from maybe a Michigan, an Ohio, something like that, when they start looking at housing relatively close to the hospital, or and it's housing plus schools, all of those considerations, as someone who's moving in, it's just there's limited availability. The market is still strapped on inventory. So we've got to come a little bit harder on what we're willing to offer folks, but it's still, I moved to Dallas in 2019, And like the housing market in my area of north of Dallas is almost when it hit the height, it was double what the purchase price was, and it's starting to eke down a little bit, but it's definitely a consideration.
Yeah, and that's obviously, that's another factor that goes into attracting candidates and mobility. You mentioned COVID, and just as much as I hate going back to it, it seems you can draw that line of demarcation as March 2020 when it hit. I think that, what we're seeing is that candidates now, I think, are much more discerning than they were back then. You look like pre-March 2020, it was almost like the Wild West in some ways. People were willing, they would go anywhere, especially if their kids were out of the house, maybe they're young boomers. Yeah, sure. Life was a great adventure. And that was really anywhere across the country. But now you're finding the candidate market, most candidates, especially in facilities management, because part of the reason you're good at what you do is because you're discerning and you ask questions and you're not just going to accept. But they are looking at all of those things much more diligently, I think, than they used to. So a really unique team. Now, Taylor, we were talking beforehand. Taylor, can you give a little bit of your background? I thought it was you're manager now. And I think it delves right into team composition and team development. Your background prior to healthcare facilities management, what did you major in, and how did you find your way into this field?
Yeah, it's kind of a ridiculous story. I literally just fell into it. I always wanted to be a lawyer my entire life, and I love politics, so I majored in political science with the intent of going to law school. Kind of when I was applying, I was just working at Office Depot over the summer, and this guy came in and I helped him with a couple jobs, and then he was like, "Hey, I have an opening for my department at Children's Health in Dallas. I think you should apply." And so I just thought, why not? And I applied. It was for the administrative assistant in the engineering department. And I, got the job started, kind of fell in love with the craziness every day and all the, what can you do? What can't you do? And I just started reading everything I could get my hands on. I joined ASHI, I joined TAFM, and just decided that this was the place for me, and just have moved my way up. And it's been really awesome to just kind of fall into, the best career for you.
That's a unique story. So did you say you were at Office Depot or Office Max working?
Office Depot. Yeah.
What was it that this person identified or saw in you that what did he get? What did he get that said, "Hey, why don't you apply"?
Well, it's funny because I worked in the copy and print center. So I didn't know it at the time, but he was coming in to make flashcards for the CHFM. And now that I look back, I realize what it was. But he had come in several times, and he wanted like a lot of custom stuff done. And I just knew how to do it. I mean, I know how to use PowerPoint and Excel and things like that. That was really the driving factor, I think, is somebody that could use the Microsoft suite. So
yeah,
that was it.
And how long did you stay in that admin role?
Gosh, I think 2 years.
Wow.
I had kind of a tumultuous start. My first week, the director quit. And
Welcome.
Then within a couple, the next couple months, we had a survey coming up. We really didn't have anybody.
That wasn't the director who hired you who quit, was it?
It was.
Oh, wow.
It was a fun start, but we had a survey coming up, and the VP at the time, he came over to me and he said, "Hey, I need you to do all this documentation for Joint Commission." I didn't know what Joint Commission was.
Sure.
So I just had to learn, and everybody else was busy because the director had just quit. So I turned to ASHI and I just watched all of their recorded conference presentations. I read all the monographs and things like that, and all the guys helped me and told me what generators were, because I didn't know, and all the testing they had to do. I literally didn't know anything, but we were up against this deadline of survey coming up, and when survey came, I got to sit in the room with the surveyor and just listen, and it was exciting and cool, and
wow,
that's what I wanted to do. Yeah,
that's a great story. I really like that. I've heard lots of stories for how people fall into it. And a lot of people say, oh, I literally
Yeah.
fell into it, but you really did.
I fell into it. Yeah.
That would not be something you would map. You know, when I looked at my oldest daughter, she just graduated from college and she was a poli-sci and English major and she wants to be a lawyer. So when I saw that you were poli-sci, that's kind of what intrigued me. So I can't see my daughter working
Well,
with them, but you know what? You never know. You probably
I
didn't see
do,
yourself working in it.
no, I didn't even know this career existed, but I do a lot of code things now. And, Joint Commission is CMS in the federal government. So
Yeah.
it's really similar, I think. You have to
Yeah.
read and interpret a code and explain it to people and, make sure we're following everything to a T. So I think it really is similar.
Yeah, no, you're using some of those same processes that probably attracted you to the law career in the beginning.
Right.
Wow, well, that's great. I'm glad I asked that question. Very interesting. Everybody's got a unique story. And so with that unique story, Clayton, let's flip it over to you talking about team development composition. And I'm glad we have that background relative to Taylor's, Taylor's background. What is your philosophy, Clayton, relative to developing your team?
Sure. So I think as a leader of a team, you are constantly on the look for gaps, right? And you've got to be on, being able to quickly identify those gaps, but then develop a plan to meet those gaps. And sometimes those gaps are going to be way down the road, and sometimes they're right in front of you. And you've got to have that agility to kind of go back and forth. But I have a philosophy, and I feel like I've said it 1,000 times, but every leader has 3 growth priorities, and they need to focus on all of them. One of those is growing yourself, right? You've got to be self-aware enough to say, I've got a gap, I've got a hole. I don't know something about this, or the organization needs someone who becomes an expert in that, and I'm going to go be that. And you go do like Taylor did. I'm going to go study. I'm going to figure it out. There are resources out there that range from, these YouTube videos to go get a degree. And I think you got to figure out what's going to take to get you to that level so that you can be effective. The next growth area, I think, is grow your team. If you are so focused on growing you and you're not giving your team an opportunity to grow or identifying some of their gaps, helping them, give them an opportunity to do something they've never done before, and let them go out there and, maybe not do it as well as you could have done it. I think that's super important and so hard for leaders to do, is to hand off things that they are good at, because you've developed that skill to someone who's not as good as you are, and let them develop that skill, right? You've got to have that, give those people that look up to you within the organization and are, they should be hungry to grow. Give them an opportunity for that.
Did you, I'm sorry to interrupt, and I know you got one more to go, but did you always have that in you, or did you have to work to develop that?
Yeah, I had to work hard. My background is construction, and I grew up on construction sites. My first 6 or 7 years in work after college was on-site construction, and you don't really, I didn't have a lot of those good role models. But then, it takes you a little bit of time in your career to where you develop a skill to where you look around in your organization or around in your community, that you're the one who knows that. You're the one who's leading that. And then you got to grow a little bit more to where you have to hand that off to someone else. And I think about when Taylor and I met 4 years ago, she was super proud of her documentation program. Well, I had built a really cool documentation program I was really proud of too. and it's, and we had some growing pains that I had to be like, you know what? I like mine. She likes hers. She's more comfortable managing hers.
Yeah.
Does it meet all the requirements? I got to let go a little bit. And I think that's something that leaders, if you don't struggle with letting go, I worry about you. But you gotta let go a little bit and let people grow.
So what was the, not to bring up a sore subject, because it certainly doesn't sound like it was, but what was did Taylor's system survive?
I think what we have today is a hybrid of the two.
It's a hybrid,
Yeah, she has done an amazing job making our documentation program at Children's, what I think is one of the industry leaders. And we've shared it on multiple webinars and multiple in-person conferences at the state and the national level to say, this is what we do and how we make sure that we check every single box when it comes to documentation. And our goal during survey is 0 findings in documentation. And it's objective. It's very, very clear. The code is written, the documentation requirements are written. We know our business, so we should be on point with it. And we're very fortunate at Children's that we've got a lot of resources that we get to put towards just documentation. It's not sitting in the director's hands and they're trying to do that on the side of their desk. We've got dedicated folks who help implement that plan. But I think that leads to my third point. As a leader, I'm growing myself, finding my gaps. I'm growing my team. I'm helping fill their gaps and growing them. So where if I move up, they get to move up with. And then the third place is we've all got to grow the industry. It doesn't matter how good of a program you have. If you ultimately have just invested all this time and energy into our team, we're going to outstrip the resources of the industry. And nobody's going to be there to support us anymore. And now we're out by ourselves. Right. And, healthcare facilities is such a small, tight-knit group of folks. I always say, if I meet someone else in my role, if I don't know them, I guarantee you we know 10 of the same people. Yeah. And I probably heard your name before, or how that we're just such a small group that we've got to grow the industry to support us. And that's where probably some of the frustrations we feel when we talk a lot about is some of these groups that we work with are kind of in the same old rut. And then it's on us to push it forward. And I was super, super proud. Taylor is the president-elect for the Texas Association of Healthcare Facility Management. Congratulations. Facility manager, mid-career, but she's going to take the reins and move help move that industry forward. And I think that's the piece that we all, it's a lot of stuff to look at on top of doing our jobs every day. But if most of us would do that, you'd be amazed at how much more growth and how much further the industry could be.
Well, there's a lot there I want to come back to, but Taylor, let me just bounce over to you for a sec relative to your role in Texas as president. How did you decide that you wanted to run for that? Was it a difficult decision to make? Well, because again, you're still learning, you've got a ton in front of you, but you got a major position. Well, you got a major position now at Children's, and you got a major position at the statewide level. Was that a hard decision to make for you to run for it?
Not really. I always reach for things like that. So that's just kind of me. But it's funny, I've kind of fell into that too, because before I was president, I was the board director for the DFW region, and the previous director, he's over at Parkland. He just texted me one day and he said, "Hey, I'm not going to run next year. Do you want to run?" And so I said, "Okay."
Nice.
And that's one of my struggles with those professional organizations, is you really have to know somebody to get somewhere. And fortunately I did. But I'd like to change that in the future. If I didn't know anybody and I wanted to get involved and run for office, I think it should be a little bit easier to do so. And so that's one of the things I hope to change. But that's where your network comes in, and grow your network and have those connections.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because we're up here in New England. And so obviously I know a lot of folks at the New England Healthcare Engineer Society, who's a great group. And I did a video with them for their fall conference. I've got us in fall for their spring conference on April 1st. And I think, I agree with you obviously we got ASHI on the national level, but at the state levels, these organizations do so much relative to that training and the connections. And so one of our goals, even with this, and I'm going down to Florida in the fall to do theirs, is just to do conversations 15 to 20 minutes with those local engineering societies, so that they too can publicize themselves to their people, to get more, as you just said, let's attract more people in. And I know Nihi's, and I'm sure you guys down in Texas the same way. I mean, it's a continuing struggle because people have so much going on. I mean, there's just, you take your work life, your personal life, and then everything else, you run out of time.
Absolutely. It's definitely a commitment.
So when does your term begin?
So Texas is different. It's a 6-year term. So I'll be president-elect for 2 years, and then I'll be president for 2 years, and then I'll be past president for 2 years. So president-elect just started, so I've got a ways to go. But
Big commitment. You don't need me telling you that. Thanks.
yeah.
Thank you. So relative to your team, Clayton, do you message this to them continuously? I guess, how do you keep them with you kind of in the game and giving opportunities so that they don't, I mean, it's very easy to be distracted these days because somebody else can offer you more money. So how do you keep them invested and growing? And it's a dog eat dog world out there. Somebody on Cheers once said. And
Absolutely. And that's interesting that's some struggles we've had recently with, once you make a name and team starts making a name for itself as a leader, everyone else needs people, and let's go to the best and see if we can't find it. And that's makes me very, very proud that that folks on the team are being asked those questions. And they, and for me, I do two things. I always say my goal is to provide you all the opportunities for you to grow however you can do. And that may mean you have to grow out of here. If we don't have an opportunity for you that you need to fit, you may have to grow away. And I hate it. I don't want to lose you, but that's just the nature of it. And I think we've got to be willing to do that and not try to hold someone here just because we feel like we can't live without them. But to combat that it's how much investment can we make into you as a person? And when you compare that to what other folks out there may be doing, I feel like we're some of the best at that, giving you time to be able to hold an office, to write and publish things within the industry, to be in webinars, to go to conference and be involved. We're going to give you that opportunity, and not only give it to you, expect you to manage that, right? I think about, if I'm 4 years here at Children's and within the engineering department, we started with, we're all just going to conference, and there's a big group of us all just kind of going to conference together and doing ASHI or TAFM or whatever that might be. And now we're starting to say, okay, that's how do we start contributing? How do we start being a part of it? How do you, sit on a panel, sit on a resume review panel for new folks, go to other conferences where you get to speak with your peers in the industry and give those opportunities to grow. That's really how I focus on, like, the managers, supervisors, managers, and director level. At the technician level, I think we've done something really exciting, and Taylor can speak a lot more to the specifics, but the high points is we're developing a job description based training program that allows for technicians to, for us to look at your job description and say, okay, a technician, like a maintenance mechanic, fresh off the street, and that's our front door. That person, has this level of training. We need to expect them to be competent there. But if you want to be an electrician or a senior maintenance mechanic or a plant operator, we're going to give you objective training to be able to let you advance. And it's not just because, you spent 6 years working with Joe the plumber. We want to make sure not only do you have the experience and the technical experience, but you've got the knowledge of understanding why we do what we do. Mm-hmm. And we can say, objectively, that via tests and assessments, that person grew from where they came in to where they are today. And Taylor, you might have some more summary of how that program works, but that's something we're launching in 2023 and are really, really excited about.
Yeah, I think kind of that's the key to attracting, millennials like myself and even Gen Z, is we're not just looking for a job. We're looking for not only a career, but a career where they're going to give us the tools to move up. And if you're not going to do it, somebody else will. So, and that's what we're doing with this program. So if I'm I come in as a a maintenance tech, but I really want to be a supervisor, we're going to give you a really objective way to do that. And we're going to give you the education in-house for free, right at your fingertips to do that. So, here's the classes you need to take. Here's the specific goals you need to meet. And obviously you're not guaranteed that supervisor position, but once one opens up, you're at the head of the class, you're ready to go. So we've got a really deep, bench we're developing. We're giving people a career path. And, I hate to say it this way, but, if people aren't doing what they're supposed to, we can't say, well, I wasn't trained on this. Well, yes, you were. You took this class. You know what the compliance requirements are. You know what was expected of you, and here's our proof that you did that. So it does it does a lot of things, but I think the main thing is it provides a career path.
How has that been received? You always hear the typical composition of a department, right? You got your high achievers and whatever that makes sense. How has the messaging been received in the department relative to this?
I think we just started developing our courses within the past couple of weeks. Legacy has. We actually started with assessing the entire department. They were given, depending on their job description, about an hour and a half time length of questions that they had to go through of really everything: compliance, troubleshooting, general maintenance, equipment, just covering everything to see where they were and to see, what classes do we need to start with? What does the department need the most? But we knew that they were going to be really scared of having to take an hour and a half long test and worried that, what that might mean for their job.
Yeah.
What happens if they fail? So we actually started messaging almost a year ago, just reiterating the message. This is, this will not affect your job. We're not, you're not going to be in trouble if you don't do well. We're just trying to see where you are. And obviously we had some people that were hesitant, but I think hopefully they heard that message enough that it got through to them. Most of them have completed the assessments. It was mostly painless once they got it done. So we've been working on that for a while. And you're right, there's always going to be people who don't want to do it, who don't want to learn. They just want to come in and do their job, and that's fine.
Yeah.
They can do that. They don't have to do all those extra things, but you do have to take the classes to meet your job description, so you have the skills that that you're currently being paid for.
Yeah, I'd like to piggyback on that a little bit. We had to, again, we started messaging this and socializing this publicly about a year ago. But even before that, when we started talking about it and we started working through what does an assessment look like and how does that work and how's the team going to respond to an assessment, we have to be extremely intentional about the words we use.
Yeah.
Because if you think about it, some of these technicians haven't taken a written test in 40 years.
Yeah.
We're a relatively young leadership team. I think our average age is right at 40, which is really young in the in the industry. And they're very highly educated group. So like tests and things aren't that uncommon for us. And we're not that far removed from it. Some of us, Taylor's luckier. She's less removed from it than I might be. But but looking at these guys who haven't taken a test in that amount of time,
Yeah.
and they're worried about it, and that's not something in their core work anymore. And having to make sure we were very, very clear and very empathetic to their feelings and what they may tell us and what they may show us are maybe two different things.
Right.
A lot of times the guys might say, yeah, whatever, it's fine. But you can tell in their body language, you can tell in how they react, you can tell in the questioning in their face. Like, we've got to make sure we put our arms around these guys and let them know that you guys already do great things. We wouldn't be a great department if you weren't doing great things. And explain over and over and over and kind of let them feel their feelings. That's why it took a year to socialize it. You got to let people feel their feelings. Sometimes they're going to get really, really mad.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And don't stop talking about it and just keep reiterating. And then they're going to get mad and they're not going to trust you, and they're still not going to trust you until you've proven that we've done the assessment. You're still here. And I'm still all we're using for this is a baseline. And I think it really show itself a year from now, once we've done some classes and we've shown some things and start identifying people who may not have ever thought themselves as leaders.
Right.
That's the stuff I'm excited about. When you get to find those people that, they're just out there grinding away, and then they realize they've got a knack for something they never even thought existed. Taylor's a great example of that.
Thank you for watching this episode of the Healthcare Facilities Network. Please give this episode a like, as it really does make a difference in helping to promote the discipline of healthcare facilities management.